My name's David. I run a wealth management firm and I help millionaires live off their portfolio. So today I'm going to talk with you guys about retirement income strategies and some of the pros and cons of the strategies that are out there, and also the strategy that we use for 100% of our clients. So first, let's just talk about what most people do. They work their whole lives, they save a lot of money, cram it all into retirement accounts, and then they're forced to take what's called a RMD, which is a required minimum distribution, which forces you to take around just under 4%. And it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but with really large retirement portfolios, this can put you in a position where you're being forced to take withdrawals that you don't necessarily want or need. And this can really push you up into high tax brackets and cause a lot of tax problems. So it's really important to plan ahead at least 5 years, preferably 10 from your retirement, so you can start to consider if Roth conversions and things of that nature make sense, so that you don't get put in a position where you're forced to take these withdrawals. So the other big con is you're being told essentially by the government what to do with your money, and it kind of takes you out of control, which sucks. The next thing a lot of people will try doing is, quote, living off the interest, either dividends or off of bond income. So there's a couple problems with this strategy. Number one, I'd say, is it's misinterpreted what exactly dividends are. So a dividend is essentially once a company makes a certain amount of money and they have nowhere else to put it, they give it back to the shareholders. And when you're focused on only chasing dividends, you're buying a narrow part of the market, which is going to be in mature, developed companies, which typically are not going to have a lot of capital appreciation. Also, dividends are not necessarily any safer than selling a company stock versus just taking a dividend, because it's the same net effect. When a company gives a dividend, let's say that you own $1 million company that has $1 million in the bank. When you pay yourself a $100,000 dividend, that company is no longer worth $1 million. The same thing can be said for companies that are paying dividends. When they're giving away money, they're also reducing the value of the company. And also, if you're just trying to live off of bond interest, one of the biggest issues you're going to run into is going to be inflation risk and also purchasing power risk. With the volatility of interest rates and also how bond prices are influenced by what interest rates are doing, it's an important part of a portfolio. But if you think you're just going to be living off of interest, off of bonds, and preserving your purchasing power over the long term, you're going to be disappointed. Next is going to be the classic 4% rule. Essentially, the 4% rule requires that you take a snapshot of where you're at in retirement. So let's say it's 5 million. And you take 4% of that, which would be 200,000. Now, if you're working with an advisor, if you're charging as much as 1%, then you're getting it taxed, which could even push you down below 200,000. So really your effective could be as low as 2%, which is unfortunate. But the problem with the 4%, it's from an old study, but some of the issues it has is when times are good, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. But also when times are bad and you're not making any adjustments and you're continuing to give yourself inflation increases, it can cause negative outcomes when you have multiple negative years and you're not making any decreases to your income. Now, the method that we use at my firm is called a dynamic distribution method, and it's similar in a sense to the 4% rule, where we take a snapshot of where you're at when you retire. So if you are at $5 million, you'll be getting closer to 260,000 per year distribution minus our fee, which is 20,000, so 240, as opposed to the 150 you'd be getting with the 4% rule after taxes and all of that. So the reason this is nice is because it's really focused on trying to ensure that you don't run out of money, because we're making adjustments to what your income is based on what the market is doing. So when times are good, you can expect income increases, but on the flip side of that, when times are bad, we also do cut income in an attempt to preserve the portfolio. And during long sustained downturns, you can expect multiple portfolio cuts. However, historically, you will get more net money and you will have a higher likelihood of success through this approach because of the mechanics and stuff that's going on in the background. A lot of advisors will just prescribe the 4% rule because it's very easy to facilitate and do for clients. Whereas the dynamic, it requires a lot more hands-on and adjustments to the portfolio. Another big differentiator between the 4% and the dynamic is 4% rule is typically going to have like a 60-40 stock bond split, where with the dynamic, we're a little bit more aggressive and we're going to be closer to 70 to 80% on the stocks and 20 to 30% on the bonds. The reason we do that and our clients feel more comfortable with a slightly higher risk portfolio is because they understand that we're being very intentional with the 30% of the bonds. Now, it's not necessarily all in bonds. What we're trying to accomplish is what's called a war chest, which means on the conservative side of the portfolio, we have a bunch of different investments in there that are designed to maintain purchasing power without going down in value during recessions. So we're basically just trying to preserve the money that's in what's called your war chest. Because what that money is for you to weather the storm during the next stock market recession so that you're not selling your stock positions while the market is down. And ideally what is happening is as we are pulling money from the conservative side of your portfolio is actually becoming slightly more aggressive while the market is in a bad position, kind of piggybacking off of Warren Buffett's be greedy when others are fearful, because we're trying to catch the upside swing, assuming that the market recovers. Now, our firm operates under two major assumptions that maybe a lot of people aren't willing to put out there, but number one is that we are not going to account for a catastrophic collapse of the United States. So we believe that the United States is going to continue to be here for the long term and maintain a similar position in the economy. The reason we do that is because if we're trying to plan for a one-off tail situation that would completely destroy the United States anyway, your portfolio likely will be one of the last things that you're worried about. Also, we do not, for the most part, do foreign investments. We believe that the United States is going to continue to lead the world in innovation and business. And we see international investments more so as a drag on the stock portfolio more than a complement. We're under the impression that the best business owners around the world and talent is continuing to come to the United States. And until that changes, we are going to maintain our current majority United States investments. Now, we've gone over a little bit of information about the different types of retirement distribution strategies there are. I did make a free tool that you can use to compare the dynamic distribution to a traditional 4% rule. So no opt-in required, no catch. Just go to my website, check out the free tool. If you're interested in talking with us, feel free to schedule a consultation. We work with families with more than $2 million who are retired or about 5 years away from retirement. So thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.